Hi guys, welcome back. I've got some more true crime stories to cover on this episode for you all. These are just some short summaries of some true crime stories that I found online. Let me know in the comments if you want me to cover any more on these, and let me know which ones you're interested in the most as well. I would like to add that some of these may have some explicit information in, subjects such as obviously murder and rape and stuff like that. So if this isn't for you, then please skip ahead to the next video. So let's get on into it. The first one is called The Boy in the Box. I know I've heard this before, obviously actually searching some true crime stories online. So it's possible that you've already sort of heard about this. So let me know in the comments if you want me to do any more information on this. In February 1957, a college student stumbled upon the remains of a young boy in the woods of Philadelphia and reported his gruesome discovery to the police. The boy was found badly beaten and laid to rest inside an old bassinet box. His identity was unknown. Several people came forward with information relating to the case, but the police were not able to verify anyone's testimony. One woman, Martha, claimed that her abusive mother brought the boy under their roof. He was subject to physical and sexual abuse. What made the police take interest in Martha's story was her knowledge of details that had not been released to the public. She claimed that shortly before the boy was beaten to death, he ate baked beans, which corroborate with the autopsy. She also claimed that he was bathed before his death, which matched the coroner's finding of water-pruned fingers. Though Martha's testimony seemed to match the evidence, her substantial history of mental illness made her an unreliable witness. It's a bit of a shame, really, isn't it? Another lead came from a psychic who accurately described a foster home near where the boy had been found, without ever having seen it. Remington Bistow, an employee at the examiner's office, followed the psychic's directions to the foster home. Inside, he discovered a bassinet matching the description of the bassinet box the boy was found in. He also found blankets similar to the one that was wrapped around the boy's body. Because there was no real incriminating evidence against the foster parents, Bristow's findings were dismissed as well. 62 years later, the case of the boy in the box has gone cold. Facial reconstruction technology has provided mock images of what the boy might have looked like alive, but no one has ever come forward to claim him. DNA and dental testing have also been attempted with no success thus far. The identity of the boy in the box remains unknown to this day. That poor boy. And the next one, second one, is called The Icebox Murders. In 1965, Fred and Edwin Rogers were living in Houston along with their grown son Charles. The family mostly kept to themselves in their quiet neighbourhood, especially given Charles' reclusive and antisocial behaviour. In fact, many neighbours were not even aware that Charles lived at the home with his parents because he left the house each day before dawn and didn't return until well after nightfall. When a family member hadn't heard from Rogers in several days, he called the Houston police for a welfare check on his elderly aunt and uncle. The patrolmen were unable to locate Fred and Edwina. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. But they noticed food sitting on the dining room table. They opened the fridge and noticed numerous packages of meat neatly stacked atop another. They then noticed 2 human heads in the vegetable bin. Additional officers arrived on the stomach-turning scene and slowly removed the packages full of dismembered body parts from the fridge. The remains were that of Fred and Edwina Rogers. The police deducted that Edwina had been brutally beaten and shot, while Fred suffered forceful trauma to the head. His eyes had been gouged out and his genitalia removed. The couple's innards had been flushed down the toilet. Charles was nowhere to be found. Naturally, Charles was the prime suspect in this heinous crime. However, he seemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. Though the police were able to collect circumstantial pieces of evidence against him, Charles Rogers was never found. Okay, so the third one on my list is about Dorothy Jane Scott. Early in 1980, Dorothy Jane Scott began receiving threatened phone calls at work. So she began getting threatening calls at work. She was the single mother of a toddler who didn't think much of the calls at first, until one night when the sinister voice over the phone told her to look outside. A single dead rose was lying on the windshield of her car. The stalker who had gotten a hold of her number would oscillate between professing his love for her and threatening bodily harm. Dorothy mentioned to several family members and friends that the voice over the phone sounded familiar, but she couldn't quite place who he was. She never got a chance to find out. One night at a staff meeting, Dorothy noticed one of her co-workers looking ill. She and another colleague drove the man to a nearby hospital. The doctors said that he had a nasty spider bite and needed a prescription. While the two co-workers were waiting for the prescription to be filled, Dorothy went out to the parking lot to get her car. It was the last time she was ever seen alive. Her co-workers testified that after she had not returned, they went out to meet her in the parking lot. At that moment, they saw her car speeding away, so they assumed there was an emergency with her son. Dorothy never returned home to her son, nor did anyone hear from her again. 4 years later, her charred bones were found at a construction site. Adding another layer of mystery to the case is the fact that a set of dog bones was found right next to her remains. Though people on the internet are still discussing the case today, no one was ever convicted or held in suspicion, and the mystery caller was never found. That poor child's now going to grow up without a mother. So sad. Okay, the fourth one is called Chicago Tylenol Murders. In September of 1982, a 12-year-old girl in Chicago passed away shortly after ingesting an extra-strength Tylenol. That same day, a man died in a hospital after taking the same pill. Two of his family members followed. Over the course of the next few weeks, more seemingly healthy people in Chicago dropped dead, and the only thing they had in common was taking extra-strength Tylenol, shortly before their ultimate death. As bottles were recalled by Johnson & Johnson, it was discovered that many of the extra-strength Tylenol pills had been laced with potassium cyanide. Once this was made public, Johnson & Johnson issued numerous ads and warnings to customers to avoid the product. The company began working feverishly on triple-sealed packages that would prevent tampering. James William Lewis of New York City contacted Johnson & Johnson, claiming that he was responsible for tampering with the bottles and filling the capsules with cyanide. He demanded $1 million in exchange for him to stop. He was arrested for the crime, and although he wasn't found guilty, he was still imprisoned for extortion. Even after Johnson & Johnson fortified their Tylenol bottles against tampering, the widespread news of what had happened in Chicago prompted crimes of a similar nature all around the country. Several more people died from cyanide poisoning found in other over-the-counter medication. The Chicago Tylenol murders is one of the few true crime stories to spark real change in the country. The quality control of pharmaceuticals increased tenfold, as did the security of their packaging. Although the FBI didn't have enough evidence to convict anyone of the crime, it is widely believed that James William Lewis and his wife were indeed responsible. Okay, and the fifth one that we're going to cover is called the Girl Scout Murders. In the summer of 1977, 3 young Girl Scouts staying at an Oklahoma campsite were raped and murdered. The girls, Lori, Michelle, and Doris, were between the ages of 8 and 10. About 2 months before the murders, a camp counselor found a disturbing note in her belongings. The culprit promised to murder 3 children at the camp, knowing that young campers enjoy telling scary stories around the campfire. The camp counselor dismissed the threatening note as nothing more than a prank, a decision she would come to regret. Early in the morning of June 13th, the girls' bodies were found in their sleeping bags out on the trail leading to the camp showers. The only evidence that their killer left behind was a red flashlight and a bloody footprint. The prime suspect in the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders was Jean Leroy Hart, an escaped convict. Hart had been raised about a mile from Camp Scott, and at the time of the murders he was at large after escaping from prison, where he had been serving time for burglary, kidnapping and rape. A local jury acquitted Hart of the crime, citing a lack of evidence. However, Oklahoma police considered the case solved. To this day, no one knows if Jean Leroy Hart got away with murder or if the true killer was someone else entirely. Either way, the girl's killer never saw justice. Okay, and this is the 6th one, the final one. This is called the Unicorn Killer. As an adolescent, Ira Einhorn gave himself the nickname of the Unicorn, the English translation of his German surname. The killer was an environmental activist and was part of an anti-war movement where he murdered his ex-girlfriend Holly Maddox. Maddox disappeared in early September 1977 after stopping by Einhorn's Philadelphia apartment to collect her things following their breakup. Several weeks after Maddox's death, police questioned her ex-boyfriend about her whereabouts, to which he stated she had disappeared on her way to the neighborhood co-op. 18 months later, after neighbors began reporting a rancid smell, police found Maddox's body stuffed in a trunk in Einhorn's closet. Several days before Einhorn was supposed to stand trial, he fled to Europe. As Einhorn had already been arraigned, sorry, that took me a while to figure out what that said, the court was able to try, convict and sentence him in absentia. Despite this fact, Einhorn managed to remain in France for 23 years, even getting married, while craftily evading extradition. The US government was finally able to bring him back to the States and reconvict him in 2002. Einhorn is now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Okay guys, that was the final story. I hope you guys all liked them. Again, if you want me to cover anything else, want me to do some research on them, just let me know down in the comments, and I'll try and do some digging online, get some more information on them. As usual, if you like my content, then please like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments if you've got anything new that you think that I should try. And please, please, please share my content with all your friends, all your family, if you think that they would enjoy it. Okay?